Hello, and welcome to the Range Project podcast. My name is Chris McGrory, and I'm currently a senior at Harvard on the baseball team studying psychology and economics. And in these conversations, I'm looking to learn from those around me at school and beyond. I want to better understand what my amazing guests do and how they do it. So that means getting the tips, tricks, and routines they use, plus the mental frameworks they have so you and I can apply them in our own lives. Now, today we have a motivating conversation with Tati Chermayeff, the person behind the popular food blog and Instagram page with a growing following of over 20,000, Healthful Blondie. That's at Healthful Blondie and healthfulblondie.com. And Tati from Connecticut is also a senior at Harvard whose Instagram page turned business started with a simple photography class challenge of a photo a day. And that inspired her to start posting her meals online. Previously, however, being a student athlete on the crew team and a national champion in high school at that, gave her plenty of reasons to put any creative outlets she had to the side. But when persistent injuries ultimately ended her career, Tati was forced to reassess who she was, which helped her tap into her more creative side. And really, at its core, this episode is about listening to that little voice telling you to tap into your creativity, and not listening to that voice telling you all the reasons why your project won't work or it's not worth it. But on top of that, Tati gives a comprehensive behind-the-scenes look into just how much work goes into every single post, and gets very tactical for anybody wanting to start a blog or Instagram page of their own. Now, with that said, the lessons she shares from her journey over the past year or so were very helpful for me and can quite easily be generalized to anybody who wants to make something and put it out there for the world. And along the way, you'll learn more about Tati too. Her views on diets and exercise practices, her daily routines that help her to create content every day, and a whole lot more. So, without further ado, please enjoy this one with Tati Chermayeff. 1, 2, 3, do it! Tati, hey, how you doing?
Hi, Chris. I'm good. How are you?
I'm awesome. And first want to say big thank you for taking the time to chat. We haven't gotten to catch up since you started the Healthful Blondie page, so I'm very excited to dig into that.
Oh, absolutely. No, thank you for having me. And this is really exciting to be part of this.
Oh, well, all thanks to you and all the amazing people that I'm able to chat with and better understand and maybe ask some question that would be weird if it wasn't in a podcast. So thank you. And I'm thinking, like, if we want to just get right into it, I mean, you've taken an idea that a lot of people have, like, I'm going to start a food blog or something creative, but you've turned it into a real life project in just like 12 months or so, gained like over 20,000 followers, right?
Yeah, it's actually the 1-year anniversary today of starting it.
Oh, how timely. Okay.
Yes.
So I'd love to hear like the origin story of Healthful Blondie. And then also maybe like, did you have a vision or a goal when you started?
Yeah, so there's probably like 2 aspects to Healthful Blondie. It's like the photography, and then also it's the food and fitness and health. And I don't think I could be where I am today without both of them. So it kind of started, I would say, with just a love for taking pictures. And I took a class at Harvard, Intro to Photography, and it like sparked my creativity, my interest. And I've always loved taking pictures of landscapes and like food and all types of things. But the class really delved deep into that creative side that I really hadn't touched since I was a child. And so I started just doing a daily practice of taking, like, he asked us 20 to 25 pictures, anything you want, just snap pictures. And so I came up with this idea, and I'm just like, why not take pictures of my food? I mean, I love cooking. I love making things aesthetically pleasing. Why not just try it out? So Healthful Blondie actually started with me just taking pictures of what I was eating, of my breakfast, my lunch, my dinner, not so much creating recipes. So it was just like toaster waffles with peanut butter and some banana on top, right? So it was very easy, not too much thought put behind it. And so then it obviously transforms into, well, we're kicked off campus, quarantine, I'm home, I'm in the kitchen a ton. And I start messing around, altering like you would say like unhealthy classic chocolate chip cookies, and like trying to alter them to make them a little bit more, or a little bit healthier, more like athlete friendly, that kind of stuff. I'm not gluten-free, dairy-free, but there are a lot of people out there that are. So I would mess around with different types of flours and whatnot. And then obviously it is transformed into now like developing recipes. But to backtrack a little bit before the actual Healthful Blondie, like how I started the account. I mean, I was a rower since the 8th grade, and that was predominantly my identity. Whenever someone asked, "Hi, Tati, like, how are you? Like, tell me something about yourself." First thing I would say is, "I'm a rower." And that kind of shaped who I was. I was disciplined. I was an athlete. And I loved to work out, but I also I felt like I had a duty, a duty to train. It wasn't always like, obviously the end goal of winning was great, but the actual grueling training, it's hard. And halfway through my time at Harvard, my sophomore year, I kept breaking my ribs, and I was just in a very bad place physically. My body was kind of saying, like, you have put it through the ringer for the past 7 years. You need to take a break. I mean, throughout high school, I would have 1 week off a year, which I was supposed to be doing cross training for. So I really never gave my body a break. And so I made the decision my sophomore spring to take a step back and reevaluate everything. And which is also probably, that was the hardest time in my life, because I had always identified as a rower. And without that, I was really I was stuck. Like, who am I? Who is Tati? What is she like? What does she do? And that's what led me to decide to go to Australia to a semester abroad, because I really needed to figure out who I was without rowing. And I always thought that the medals were like the most rewarding part. But now looking back on it, it's definitely more the connection of my mind, body, my real love for fitness and food. But that wasn't easy getting there. I had to really struggle. I mean, I went to Australia alone. No one from Harvard was there. I packed up my bags. The time difference was, I think, 12 or 14 hours. So I could barely talk to anyone here. And it was definitely one of the more like emotional and intense periods in my life. But I also grew so much and learned so much about myself that I came back like ready to conquer, to be happy, to be someone that wasn't just a rower. Long story short, that is basically how it started.
No, that's a great background, and a lot of that story resonates with me. I've mentioned it on a few past podcasts, but I came into college. I had a broken back, couldn't play. Well, I played through my senior year of high school, which was not smart, and then came on and I just couldn't play for the entire fall, and I probably came back too fast for the spring. And yeah, that identity piece is like, when it's taken away from me, I was like, who am I? Like, I thought everything I had in like that was valuable was like to throw with my right arm, right?
Yep, completely. I mean, yeah. I mean, you're spending 30 hours a week on this. So like, how, like, taking that out, like, who are you? What do you do?
So I mean, for me, I was lucky, like, okay, you're in a back brace, your exercise is walking around the block. And then I was lucky that I was forced to be kind of like solitary, and that led me to listening to podcasts and reading books. So I'd love
Yeah.
to, you said that you grew a lot as, or like kind of in isolation in Australia. What was it that you were like asking yourself? What like experiences kind of change that? Like what reflection was most impactful?
Yeah. So I would say probably the most impactful was learning to be with myself. I'd always like surrounded myself with people and things to do and activities to like do. If I wasn't at rowing, I was in the dining hall talking to people. If I wasn't in the dining hall talking to people, I was in Cabot, like where it's a very social library, you know? So I really in Australia learned what it meant to be by myself. And like I made amazing friends there, don't get me wrong, but I really it was kind of like an experience where I would go on a walk to the beach and read a book alone, or I would walk to the grocery store alone with music and choose, you know, like things I had never really done because I was always with friends or family. I mean, I grew up in a big family. There's six of us, and we have two dogs, which I'm sure you can hear the one of them barking in the
I love
background
it.
right
I
now.
love it.
But yeah, so it was like a very transformative to learn like how do I live with myself. I don't know how else to like verbalize it, but really that's how I learned what I like, what I don't like, what I want to do, what I don't want to do, what do I aspire to do, and that.
That makes a lot of sense. And maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth, but kind of showed you like, hey, there's this other side to me that's like beyond just an athlete that's training for the medal, like you said. And like maybe there's this creative side that like I didn't give myself the space to pursue. Am I wrong?
100%. I mean, I had like growing up, I loved photography. My mom was a photographer for 15 years. I mean, but I just had never really picked up a camera because I was didn't have time, or I made excuses, or it was rowing first, all that. So it really, yeah, it gave me a chance to tap into that like childhood creativity, which I was there, but I mean, I never really used it.
And like I said, that paints an awesome picture, just like understanding like where you're coming from, and it makes a lot of sense. And I'd love to circle back to the Healthful Blondie story. And like when you were starting out, okay, it probably was a blessing that you had this like challenge from your professor, like, okay, take photos every day or whatever it was. But I mean, I know for me starting out this podcast, I set the bar too high back when we were sent home from off campus. And that's when I started it. And I did like one episode. I like tried to make it perfect. There was just too much resistance for me to even start. And I'd love to hear if there were any barriers that you had to overcome when you were starting out the page, and kind of like how you navigated that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it started out as just an Instagram, which there weren't too many barriers with that. I mean, obviously, if you take a picture of food and it's not very appetizing or appealing, like no one's going to like it, right? Or no one's going to follow you because it doesn't look good. But so I would say that as it started off, it was purely for fun. I really didn't even tell my friends about it. It was like just a private thing that I like to do. And then it started gaining traction, and it was just based on very simple recipes. So, I mean, I was taking pictures in my dorm room. I was like because we were in school from January to February or almost to March. And so that's how I think I got my primary base. It was a lot of college girls or just girls in high school that wanted quick meals like oatmeal or snacks or whatever. But then when we got sent home, I had more time. And I was like, well, I was toying with this idea, like, why not start a website? I mean, it could be interesting. I started making my own recipes. And so I just dove into it. And of course, I didn't know that much. I've been learning throughout every single step of the process, and going back, I could have done things so much more efficiently. But I mean, I guess you have to fail to learn. And so I started the Squarespace website, which was the easiest to use when you had no coding background. Very simple blocks. You can change fonts very easily and whatnot. but it wasn't conducive to food bloggers because they didn't have this recipe. So when you search a recipe, best chocolate chip cookies, all these different recipes come up. And that's based on like a CSS code that is from a recipe card that shows you like how long it takes, what ingredients are in it, and the instructions. And Google will take that and put it into their like easily searched box or whatnot. And I didn't know that at first, but then after not getting as much like hits on my page, I slowly learned. I'm like, all right, I got to make a transition. So this is about the time school had gotten out and my internship had just been canceled for the summer, which was defeating because I had worked so hard to get it. But due to what was happening, they just couldn't, I was the only intern, they just couldn't take me on. It was too much. And so they said, we're so sorry, but we can't do it. And so I was like, well, what am I going to do for the next 3 months? All my friends have some sort of job or internship. And so I was like, I'm just going to go dive in. I'm just going to do it. Why not just like fully give all my attention and effort and energy to Healthful Blondie and see where it gets? I mean, I could fail, but what's to lose? Like no one's really going to ask what I did this summer, right? It's a kind of, I could either sit here or I could try to grow something. And so I had to switch hosting sites to WordPress. I had to teach myself CSS code. I had to learn how to tag things, metadata tagging, SEO action. So like when you look up like easy vegan brownie, like how do I get my recipe at the top of that list, right? So I spent all summer doing that, developing recipes, growing. And I mean, my 500 followers turned to 10K in June and then 15K in August. And now I'm at 20K. I hit 20K in December. But that's not to say there haven't been big struggles in between. I mean, website crashing or Instagram. Like I got locked out of my Instagram for a week and I couldn't get back into it. And I had no idea what was wrong. And it was just, they thought I had been hacked, but I wasn't. I mean, and then now I'm jumping ahead, currently focusing on Pinterest, which is something I have no idea. I think it's a mom thing, but
right.
That's where I've watched YouTube video after YouTube video and read article after article about how to grow my blog, how to grow my business. And everyone says 80% of their traffic comes from Pinterest. And I have this like totally untapped like growth thing over here that I need to get into. So I've been completely focusing on like making pins. You have to post 25 times a day. So I got this scheduler to do that for me. I'm investing in myself and I already got up. So I started with 0 and now I'm up at 6.1K views a month. And I mean, the big bloggers are at millions of views, but slowly but steady, I'm going to get there because Instagram only makes up 5% of blog traffic. And that I had no idea about that. I thought that was all the traffic. So right now that's my focus. But yeah, there's highs and lows with this.
No, that's awesome background. And maybe offline, I'll ask some questions as I'm starting to build my website and just like digging in, teaching myself SEO. It's like, oh, wow, there's a whole world behind this that I had no idea about. So yeah, maybe offline we can nerd out. But you mentioned that you could have done things more efficiently. And this is going back to like those people who just like want to start something. I'd love to hear if you had any tips for those people. Yeah, just like learning from your experience, like you said, you could have done things more efficiently. Is there like something tactical that you would have done? Would it have been like a different mindset that you would have had around your page or project more generally? I'd love to hear if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing would be is just start it. I mean, what is stopping you? Like, just do it. You just open Instagram, log in or start an account and just do it. Don't let the doubt of, oh, it's not going to be successful. Oh, what are people going to judge me? Like, oh, it's so, like, what are my peers going to think if I'm doing this food blog? It's kind of weird. Like, no, if you like it, do it. And so that would be my first piece of advice. And then particularly the second piece would just be do something like if you are like specialize in something. So I specialized first in like breakfast foods, right? And then it kind of evolved to making my own like my tagline is like fresh and simple recipes, and kind of just like focusing on being the best at that you can. So put all your energy into it and it will grow. Don't be like, oh, I only got like 5 followers yesterday. Like in the grand scheme of things, like I don't even remember that. Like when I was like stressed out about like people commenting or liking or following me, just every day if it brings you joy, just keep doing it and it's going to show. So I couldn't like recommend I stress that enough. Like your passion shows with what you produce, what you share and whatnot. And then specifically, like if you're going to go into the blog thing, if you're into the food business, or even I would recommend WordPress. I like WordPress a lot, especially if you're going into the food thing. And I have so many different, like with SEO, there's like these plugins that you can download and whatnot that I wish I had known. So it's called like SEO Yoast or something like that. Like 100% get that. Or if you're doing like recipes, like it's called Tasty Recipes for WordPress. Get that. You need it. And one of the biggest things I've learned is you've had to spend money to make money. So invest in yourself. Yes, there was upfront costs with buying the host domain, getting the WordPress theme. I actually went through some like online courses. So just kind of invest in yourself and your passion will show.
What do you think was the best investment you made that you think like, oh, these other things like domain name, style on my website were necessary, but like something that just has like the biggest ROI that you can think of? And maybe there wasn't one thing in particular.
Yeah. I think it would be, well, it probably wasn't one thing in particular, but I would say like the top few things was getting Lightroom, which is like a Photoshop
Adobe.
Lightroom. Yeah, Adobe Lightroom. So I can really edit the pictures and make the colors pop, because I mean, with food, it could be very appetizing or very disgusting, and there's a very fine line. So you have to make it, And then probably the second thing would be the plugins that I got. Each one ranges from $50 to $75. And I mean, I was funding this all by myself. So I worked at Harvard Student Agencies at the dry cleaning store, and I had saved up some money, and that's what I was using. And then the third thing, investment wise, was probably this Pinterest course that I just took. I had no idea what it was, this untapped potential that I'm trying to get into. And so I just paid, I think, $150 to do this. Like, I think it was like a 10-hour course, and I've learned so much, and hopefully I can see it being implemented now.
I've also found like when you invest something of your own, like even just like buying this microphone for the podcast, right? like you invest more of your time and energy into it as well.
100%.
So, I mean, you've mentioned like obviously the dollars and cents, but you can't underscore enough just like the investment of the time and energy that you had as well, obviously.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned the idea of like that lack of receptivity at first, not caring what other people think. Like, how did you overcome 100 or 150 likes in January, and then just like not being worried about that? Because I find myself like, I love these conversations, and like I'm just like glowing after I finish each and every one of them, and I go tell my parents like, oh, that was like the best one yet. And it's like, yeah, obviously like I say that after each one. But then like you look at the views or the streams, it's like, oh, well, only like this many are listening. Oh, like start thinking like, oh, how do I increase this, that, the other? So I'd love to hear how you think about how you overcame those early days where you weren't getting that instant gratification of thousands of likes, hundreds of comments, whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. That was, I mean, looking back on it now, I know like it's in the grand scheme of things, not big, but in that moment, it felt like really defeating, because you're like, I put so much energy and passion and work into this, and how it's just not going anywhere. Like, or it's only being seen by X amount of people. And that's like a mindset thing that I had to work on. And in time, it will grow. And I know it's hard to think that like, oh, tomorrow it will get bigger and the next day it'll get bigger and whatever. But with your end goal, like I used to just set goals for myself. So like in January, I was like, by June, I want to have, I said 5K followers. It ended up being 10K followers. So you just have to go day by like segment by segment, and it will happen. Just like set goals for yourself, and it can be ambitious goals or it could be a little bit lower and you don't really know, but is if you don't hold yourself to some type of thing like standard or goal or whatever, it's very easy to get wrapped up in the idea of like, oh, it's not really going anywhere. It's like a negative mindset.
I've found with setting goals, it just gets you like thinking about ways to like, once you put it on paper or on your whiteboard, whatever it is, like then you start thinking about it in the shower, like, oh, how could I increase my followers? Oh, this would be a cool blog post. And it's like, you think like, oh, writing down a goal is stupid, it's not going to do anything. It's like, no, it's in those weird moments that's when you have these breakthrough ideas. Does that resonate with you?
100%. I mean, I will wake up at 6. I'm an early riser. So I'll wake up at like 6 a.m., 6:30 and have an idea for a recipe. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the best recipe. I need to write it down right now. Or I'll have a dream about something. I'm like, that would be so good. And sometimes those are like the best recipes and most well-received recipes on my site and on my blog. So 100% are like, whether I'm like on a walk or in the car with my dad talking about something random, like ideas will just come to me. And it's really interesting. Really cool to see like this creativity and like this flow coming, which I always thought, oh, I'm not artistic. Oh, I'm not creative, but yeah.
And I think that at least for me, it starts with writing it down. And then it's like, it's not like I want to say you're holding yourself accountable, but it's just like putting the idea out there and then you let your subconscious work. So
yes.
I'm glad that that resonated with you. And you said like you're not sure what's going to be like the best received or whatever. I mean, I was looking through like sometimes your peanut butter and jelly sandwich or like your yogurt bowl is the best received. That probably took you 15 minutes, and then a recipe that took you 3 days gets like no love. So has there been anything that was kind of like you didn't expect to be well received that was, and then kind of off of that, like what was it? Maybe not one thing, but like what made it like kind of take off more exponentially? Like what would you attribute the more recent success to?
Yeah. So when I do one recipe, it usually takes 2 weeks to get to the final product. So I tested at least 3 times because there could be different reactions with the ingredients, or the oven could be different or whatever. And I need it to be perfect 3 times for me to say, okay, this is good enough to share with the world. Because if something fails when someone else makes it, it looks like I'm not doing my job, or I'm not doing a good job, or like my recipes are gross or whatever. So whatever I put out there, I want to know confidently that I love it. It tastes good to me. So, I mean, everyone has different tastes, don't get me wrong, but if someone has a bad reaction, it's like, well, I loved it and I know my friends loved it, so it's okay. But if I were to attribute like one thing, you talked about that peanut butter French toast.
Yes.
That was my most liked picture in 2020. It had like 10K likes. It reached over like 500K people, which means like 500K people saw it. And honestly, like that is what made me go viral, because big, I guess, companies, magazines, whatever, saw that and they started reposting me. So like Pop Sugar Fitness, which has 1.1 million followers, reposted me. Health Magazine, which almost has 1 million followers, reposted me. And like that's when you get exposure. And so I got tons of follows off that. And then obviously like people start making your recipes and it goes like word of mouth, and more people start following me because they'll be like, oh, I made Healthful Blondies, like peanut butter blondies, and they were great. And then someone's like, oh, I want to try that out, let me follow her. So it kind of goes like down that chain. But yeah, that's how I would go about that question.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And it's funny because I see these like, I think it's important that all of your recipes are simple. Like even me in an apartment for my first time, like I made some of your like chicken tenders in an air fryer that you inspired me to ask. It was an early Christmas present. I was like, Mom, I want an air fryer. So thank you for that.
They are the best.
Yeah. And I was like, well, Tati's doing like a million recipes with it. Like, I need one.
Yeah.
So I did like chicken tenders and that. And like, I've tried a few others, but more generally, do you have like an ethos behind what like does or doesn't make the page? Or is there like a question you ask yourself before posting? Because you don't silo yourself into like, oh, I am the gluten-free page, I am the vegan page, I am the whatever. So I'd love to hear like how you think about that.
Yeah, so I won't post anything that I have a doubt that or that I don't like. Like obviously I try everything I make and then I put it up to the taste testers. So whether when I'm in college, it was my roommates, my friends, at home it's my brother, my dad, my mom, my sister, and all who have different tastes. Like my mom and my sister are a little bit more healthier like me, but my dad and brother eat anything, you know? So I don't put anything out there that I don't 100% believe is like a yummy recipe. And then, yeah, you're right. I don't have like a tagline. I'm not like gluten-free only or dairy-free only or paleo or vegan or whatever it is. But I want to make recipes that are customizable. So if you are that, you can easily make that recipe. And obviously very simple, not a ton of ingredients, because who wants to go to the supermarket and buy like 10 spices you're never going to touch again for $50?
Right.
So I like to keep everything simple, no more than like 10 ingredients usually. And then I offer like substitutions. So if you're vegan, instead of using like chicken in my curry, you can use chickpeas. Or if you're gluten-free and you want to make my muffins, you can take out the oat flour and put almond flour. So very easy substitute. Just making like cooking and eating healthy fun, because it's not just like a spinach salad, you know, like that's like boring, gross, get over it, you know? You want to have like flavor and like try something new. Like who would have thought like a peanut butter curry would be so delicious? And like it's packed with vitamins and protein and all kind of great stuff. But yeah.
That's super cool. And I'd be interested to hear if, because there are like a million food trends out there, I don't know, it seems like it's the flavor of the week, no pun intended,
Yes.
but like it just goes. I mean, earlier this year, it was the air fryer. Then it was like baking, like different breads.
Banana bread.
And then, right. And then, I mean, more large scale trends, like you said, like paleo, keto, vegan. Are there any trends that you subscribe to that you like? For me, like eating a primarily vegetarian diet is what makes my body feel the best until like dinner. It's like, okay, going to have a heavy meal later. And I'm wondering if there is anything that like you not necessarily subscribe to, but like trends that you like, whether it's diet or just cooking more generally, and then some others that you like question and maybe don't like as much.
Yeah. So I would consider myself like an anti-diet person. I don't believe in that whole thing. I think all foods fit. I think everything in balance. If I want a chocolate chip cookie, I'm gonna have a chocolate chip cookie. And so obviously like there's a lot of fad behind the keto, high fat, no carb diet, or paleo, which is like gluten-free, dairy-free. And there's all these different like names out there. And it can be really overwhelming, especially to young women. And I just think that food is meant to be enjoyed. And so if I were to, I definitely don't follow a diet. And I think that I'm not going to chastise anyone who does, because it works for food works differently for everyone. But yeah, I would say like if I were to choose one, it's all foods fit.
That's awesome. And it is reflected in your page. Like you can find anything on your Instagram and then obviously just as easily on your website. And like, okay, you're going to have a cookie. Maybe you have an option that there's chickpeas in it or avocados in it, which I was like, how do you come up with those ideas? Like I would never think like, did you post the brownie today that was made with chickpeas?
Yes, it's a blondie. It's a gingerbread blondie made with chickpeas.
It looked delicious. So like, where do you come up with these weird ideas? Do you see it like on the corner of the internet and you're like, oh, let me try that?
Yeah. So a lot of different things. So like, I would say sometimes I get my inspiration from just like scrolling through the popular page on Instagram and seeing like, oh, like that person's cooking with like avocado, and like I've seen avocado brownies before, but I'm like, how can I put my own spin on it? So I added a banana to mine to make it like naturally sweet. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, I was the founder of the avocado brownie or the founder of like a chickpea blondie, but I bring my own twist to each recipe. So I brought like the gingerbread idea. So it's like, it tastes like a gingerbread house, but it's a blondie made with chickpeas, which makes chickpeas is like when you put it in a food processor and you bake it, it becomes like a very buttery texture. So it's like adding butter without butter. And it's very gooey and dense. It's like what I look for in a chickpea or a brownie. And it also adds protein. So chickpeas have a lot of protein in it. So like each brownie has like 5 grams of protein without even trying, and you're sneaking in vegetables. So I just like try to find fun ways to put like nutrients and healthy kind of things into desserts or snacks or whatever. And like, you don't even know, like my dad didn't even know it had chickpeas in it when I fed it to him. He was like, oh, this is really good. What is it? Oh, it's chickpeas.
Like, what?
So yeah, like, what is that? But yeah, it's fun to do that kind of stuff.
No, and it is so cool to see like these little spins on like your favorite recipes, and they're all like very much uniquely yours. And you mentioned that like you're influenced by other food pages, but you've also done a whole lot of traveling on top of just Australia. Your Instagram is littered with the coolest photos around the world. And I'm wondering if there are like food trends that are influenced from your travels and being inspired by those types of cuisines.
Absolutely. So I love trying new food. Like, honestly, it might sound crazy to some people, but when I go like on vacation somewhere, I always want to go to restaurants and local places and try cuisines and foods I've never had before. It just brings me so much joy. And so, I mean, this summer, I was away in the Caribbean and I came back after eating. So we had like a home cook, and she was making the most delicious like rice and these curries and tacos and fresh fish with like lime and coconut. And I never had thought to put coconut in shrimp. And so I came back and was like, I'm so inspired. I need to do something like this. And that's where my recipe for the Caribbean shrimp tacos came to be. And that was picked up by Health magazine and posted on their website. And that was another big growth for me. I got a lot of hits because of that. But yeah, and like my mom, she's Latin American. She grew up in Guatemala. And so I have a lot of that. And growing up, I always had some delicious eats. And so that also inspires me. But yeah, like travel and trying new cuisines, it's not only like fun for me, but it really does come into Healthful Blondie.
Are there any other cuisines that like you might not have expected to like, or maybe weren't exposed to, that really resonate with you, that you've come to enjoy like maybe later in life?
Absolutely. So you might laugh, but I didn't eat avocado until last year. I also didn't eat sushi until last year. I was a little bit of a picky eater before
Oh my
Healthful
goodness,
Blondie.
that's funny.
So I think if I had to put my favorite cuisine, it would probably be Mexican food. But obviously I grew up with that, so that's not something that is new to me. But I would say a new cuisine, when I was in Australia, there's a big Asian influence actually, because it's right next to Asia. So I have a new found love for Thai food, which I really never touched growing up. And then also Indian food. I don't know why, but when I grew up, my dad would order it and I'd be like, no, I won't eat it. Not for me. No, thank you. Like, I'll just stick to my quesadilla. But now like chicken tikka masala is one of my favorite go-to dinners. So delicious. But yeah.
That's so cool to hear. And I think I see some maybe easily replicable recipes in your future of like those kind of like more unique kind of like making something that might be scary, simple. And like, I think that would be really, really fun to see. But also on your page, your personality comes out, and then same thing with your website. And I notice like you respond to every single comment, you post every single day. Am I like, have you missed a day?
No.
So
No.
I'd love to hear if you have like I imagine that's intentional. Like that is a goal of yours.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, what is your thinking behind that?
Absolutely. So engagement is so important on Instagram. It's the whole algorithm of how you are going to come up on the popular page, how people are just going to stumble across your site, or how people want, or if they want to continue to comment, if they want to interact with your site, if they want to make your recipe. So I would say along those lines, it's super intentional that I post every single day. And I actually post every single day at the same time. I do it between 9 a.m. and like 11 a.m., like that 2 hour window, because Instagram knows like that's when I'm going to post, and through their algorithm, like it will pop up on people's feeds more. And so, again, super intentional in that aspect. And then also responding to every single comment. I mean, I do that. I've been doing that since day one. And that's just to like not only like appreciate, like, thank you for taking the time to write a comment. Oh, this looks yummy. Oh, I tried this. It was great. Or looks amazing. I want to try it. Responding to every single person, it makes them feel like, oh, she's listening. She actually cares what I think. She actually cares that I'm like a follower of hers, right? And I mean, at least for me personally, when a big food blogger responds to my comment, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Like, I didn't know she actually read it, you know? And so again, that helps the algorithm, but it's also to like kind of like tie in my following base. Like I want them to be not like friends, you know what I mean? Like they feel like you actually care. That, I mean, it's so cool that all these people follow me, and I want them to know that I actually care what they say, because I read every single comment and I love it. It makes me smile. And then but along those lines, I also want to mention like hashtags. Growing an Instagram, for anyone out there that wants to, you can use 30 hashtags per photo, and you have to use every single one, like religiously. Change them up a little bit, but it really is what's going to put you on the popular page, and that's when people discover you.
Yeah, and I see you even put that in like its own comment of like a comment of just hashtags. So that's
Yeah.
funny. And I was like, what is she doing? And
I know.
thank you.
Yep.
That makes sense. No, that's cool. And it doesn't take away from the post itself. It's not distracting. And your comments on other people's comments just like creates this sense of community
Yeah.
that's super, super cool to see. In like with all of that content, your daily posts, I'm sure you're trying out recipes for the rest of the day. I'm wondering what your daily routine looks like. I know it sounds like it starts early, 6 or 6:30, and I'm interested to hear like what your daily routine looks like just to keep this going.
Absolutely. So the picture I post that day, like say the chickpea blondies that I posted today, that photo has been ready to go for like nearly 2 weeks. All right. Like I have this app called Preview, and you can preview what your feed is going to look like. So I plan weeks in advance, so I'm not stressed out. In the beginning, it was I would take a picture and post what I ate that morning, that day. But now it's like 1 to 2 weeks out. I have everything planned out, which makes it a lot less stressful now, because I don't have to like, oh my gosh, I got to get up, make my food, take a picture, edit it, like get it up on Instagram. One single blog post takes me 2 days to write, because I have to edit it and do the SEO and edit the pictures and make the Pinterest pin and make the recipe easy to understand. So besides that, I would say I get up in the morning, I get some coffee, sit out, or not, it's cold now, but usually I'll sit outside in the summer, or I'll look out the window, kind of just like calm myself and make a game plan. And I don't like to be in the kitchen every single day, because it's very tiring. And when a recipe fails once, twice, 3 times, it's very defeating. So I set usually 3 days a week. I usually do Mondays, Tuesdays, and Saturdays to do like recipe testing. And also very weather dependent on photos, because you need to have a very cool, like a very non-harsh lighting. So I can only take photos in the morning at my house. In Boston, I can take photos from like 10 a.m. to like 2, because the lighting in my apartment is just that way. So here, if I'm going to take a photo shoot of something, it's going to be around 9:30 a.m. So this morning, I have a new recipe coming up. Probably going to be posting next week. It is chicken parm stuffed sweet potatoes.
Oh
And
my
so
oh my goodness. We just need to hit pause on that. Everybody listen to that. Two of my favorite foods, chicken parm and sweet potatoes. So continue.
yes. And so I had to make that at 9 a.m. this morning because I needed to shoot by the sun comes out and is super harsh by 10:30 at my house. So obviously I plan weather dependent on photo shoots, and recipe testing is that always in the morning. And then in the afternoon, I would say, if I don't have something else planned or I'm doing schoolwork when I'm like in school or whatnot, I'm working on my blog, writing a blog post, Pinterest, getting photos edited for next week. But yeah, so I don't really do cooking at night or in the afternoon. It's always in the morning.
Very cool. And you mentioned that in your mornings, they start early, coffee, and then setting like a game plan for your day. More like the details of that. Like, what does that look like? Are you thinking like, this is what I'm going to do every hour today? Or is it more like these are goals for the week? Or how do you think about jump starting your day?
Yeah, I write it down, as silly as it sounds. I have goals. So it's not hour by hour, but it's 3 things that I need to get done today, whether that is writing an essay for school or editing this blog for it to go live tomorrow, to sending an email to a company or brand that I'm working with. It's always, I have to write it out for myself I'm a very much a person that likes to cross something off a list. Like I did it.
Same here.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I in the morning I'm planning, and it's also like how I'm feeling. So say it's a Monday and I'm like, I'm really not feeling the kitchen right now. Totally fine. I can do it another day. I can do something else that morning. I can work out earlier. Like it completely depends, how I'm feeling that morning. But yeah, very important for me to write down goals and cross it off.
And you mentioned your exercise, which is kind of like this other part of the Healthful Blondie page, is like fitness and just overall well-being. We already touched upon your relationship with exercise as an athlete, and I'm interested to hear how that's transitioned now, kind of post D1 athlete life, which is crazy. And yeah, just kind of your relationship with that. I see you do everything from spin classes, like crushing long bike rides, to lifting weights, to, I mean, you don't discriminate against any sort of exercise. So
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear kind of how that relationship with exercise has changed over time.
Absolutely. So, before, like when I was rowing, obviously there was always an end goal. So each like workout, each lift, everything had a very intent purpose. And so when I stopped rowing, I needed to take a break for a little bit just to like, what is life without working out? Like I had worked out my entire, like so hard. I would train 3 hours a day. In high school, I would get up at 4 a.m. to train before school, go to school, and then come back to the club after school and train for another 2 hours. Like it was crazy. And same with rowing. I mean, we had practice in the morning and night or in the afternoon at Harvard. And so I took about like, after I stopped rowing, 6 months where I just didn't do anything. I was like, I just need to reset and figure it out. And like, it was great. It was also the time I realized like, I love to be active. I'm going to get back into it. And because that's like such a fun, like it's such a part of me. Like I love getting outside, walking, moving my body. Like it's fun to me. It's not a job, which I felt like at the end of my rowing career, it was a job. So I had to ignite that passion and that love that I always had for fitness. And now I do everything. I mean, nothing like if someone says, oh, you want to go for a walk, like, yeah, like that will be my workout for the day. Or, oh, do you want to go to a spin class? Sure. Or do you want to go to the gym with me? My brother has been home for the past month with me over Christmas break, and he started lifting. He's like, Tati, like, you want to come to the gym with me? I'm like, sure. It's 3 p.m. I don't really want to do it, but let's try it. But yeah, so I got back into lifting again for pure joy. If I wake up one morning and I want to go or do a Peloton class, that's what I'll do. But it's really like how I feel and just like the joy of movement. Like I started trying Pilates and yoga, which I'd never really done before. But yeah, it's all for fun.
That's so good to hear, because like you said, it's a chore when it shouldn't be. And I think it sounds like your high school life, which we didn't really even dig into, but like that created a sense of discipline and orderly, like an orderliness to your schedule that probably was conducive to doing well in the classroom, doing well extracurricularly, setting yourself up for success to be recruited to Harvard. Am I wrong?
No, it's completely that. I was very structured. I always had a goal, an end goal, whether it was for rowing, train, national championship, then like training for getting into Harvard, getting recruited to Harvard. I got into Harvard. What's next? Like train to like go to NCAAs. What's next? And so like I always had something I needed to accomplish, and I set each bar to get there. And now I'm in a time in my life where I'm graduating in May and I'm not really quite sure what I'm going to do. And so it's scary, but it's also like fun. I get to figure out for once in my life, I get to like choose what I do. And like, it's so different. But yeah.
And that mindset, like, yes, it is scary, but you have the perspective of like, no, this is fun. I'm wondering if that's just like an overall philosophy you have, but also more like acutely, like you're doing so much. I can only imagine there's times where something doesn't work. You feel overwhelmed. There's a lot of stress. I mean, school on top of running this blog and page full time, it can be overwhelming in moments of unfocused. I'm wondering, is there like a routine or tactic or mindset that you found has been like super helpful for you to like get back to baseline, get back to like recharge your batteries?
Absolutely. So I'm a firm, like, don't get me wrong. There are moments where I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this is crazy. Like I've doing this food blog thing. Yeah, it's really fun, but is it really going to go anywhere? Am I wasting my time? Like why am I even doing it? And it'll be like late at night or like me in the middle of a blog post feeling defeated that it's not perfect, And I just have to be like, all right, Tati, take a step back, go for a walk. I love walking outside. That really like refreshes me, just like calms me down, or I'll just go and turn on a mindless television show or go listen to a podcast or do something completely different. And then I come back and sit down and I'm like, all right, this is what you have to do today. It's going to be okay. And that's with Healthful Blondie. And that's also with school. Like if I'm getting stressed out about some essay or some exam, walk away for a little bit, calm myself down, come back and study, or come back and finish the essay. And so I would say definitely just not everything is like intense or emotional or stressful as you actually think it is in that moment. Because when you look back on it, it's really, you're not even going to remember it. So just really just taking a step back and everything's going to be fine in the grand scheme of things.
That's an amazing perspective, and one that I think everybody can be reminded of, because in the moment, whatever you're working on or stressed out about seems like the biggest issue in the world, right?
Yeah.
So I've found, I think a lot of people in the past 8 or plus months have found walking as like a great way to just reset. And you mentioned you might listen to a podcast. So I have to ask, and this is one of my favorite rapid fire questions as we kind of see the end of this conversation on the horizon, is like, what are some of your favorites or that have been like super impactful for you?
Yeah, I absolutely love How I Built This by Guy Raz. It is my favorite podcast. I've listened to almost all of them, from Whole Foods to Lara Bar to Cliff Bar to Kodiak cakes, like the protein pancakes. I just love it. It's just so interesting because you know what? It's not all easy. You think, oh, it's such an amazing company. How did you build this? Ups and downs and failures and learning, and many went bankrupt. There's so much to it. And I felt that myself. Like one day I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm killing it. I got 10K likes on this picture, or I got like 20 remakes on this recipe. I'm doing great. And the next day I'm like only getting 400 likes on something. And I'm like, oh, like this sucks. Like, should I just quit now? Like, no, it's okay. Like, just keep pushing through. And I don't know where Healthful Blondie is going to end up, but for sure, just knowing that there are ups and downs, it calms me. And learning how these cool entrepreneurs make their food companies or whatever they start. It's very cool to listen to.
That is so important. I love that podcast as well. And you mentioned like you get in those conversations, you hear the failures. I know before we hit record, you mentioned how for every one recipe that makes it, there are 5 that fail that nobody sees, right?
Yes. Oh, yes.
So I think just hearing those stories of, you know, we see the successes, we see the success on your page, we see the success of this company on a podcast, but we don't see all the failures that helped get you there. So I think that's really important to underscore for anybody trying to start something,
Absolutely.
like build something themselves. So thank you for bringing that up. My next question is a little lighter, and because you're testing so many things, and it can be in food or elsewhere, I'd be interested to hear if you have a favorite purchase you've made recently for, say, you set the number, but I'm thinking like under $100 that has been like really positively impactful for you.
You know, you're going to laugh, but you actually brought it up earlier. I just bought myself a new air fryer for my apartment because I have one at home, but I needed one for my apartment. So that is it's under $100 and it is game changer. Clearly you know a little bit about it, but it cooks absolutely everything. And so I couldn't be more like pro air fryer.
Can you give the listeners, and more importantly, myself, your favorite go-to air fryer recipes, whether point us in the direction of your page or just more general ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love making chicken tenders in there. I mean, you brought that up as well. Super easy.
They come out great.
Super crispy too.
Right.
But yeah, so actually I've been working for the past few weeks on making my website more searchable. And so I have this new drop down menu, which I had to like learn how to make, which was really hard, but in the end it works now. So you can filter really easily, like, oh, I want a recipe that's 30 minutes or under. Oh, I want a recipe that's stovetop. Oh, I want a recipe that's for meal prep, or air fryer. And you can click on it and it's all the recipes I have that are conducive to that. And obviously I cook so much that I don't even have time to put everything I make on my website. So I have like, if you're going to try something, it's not on my website yet, but I have to do it. Air fried salmon. You do it for like at 380 for like 8 to 10 minutes. It is so perfectly crispy and delicious that it's a game changer, but I have to get it up there. It's really hard when you put so much time. It's like at least 6 hours per blog post, right? And I just don't have enough time because I'm also a student, also doing like trying to find a job for next year. So I wish I had more time, but yes.
And so we'll point people in the direction of healthfulblondie.com, right?
Yes.
And people use the drop down search menu to find your next snack or breakfast or dinner or whatever, because it's all on the website. So that's cool. And yes, I am also a fan of the air fryer. I second that recommendation. And if it's cool with you, just like another like 1 or 2 questions,
yeah,
to wrap this up. And it sounds like you've had a lot of transitions and changes over the past 3.5+ years in college, and like it's kind of what it's all about. Like I look back and it's crazy, like the freshman year of me versus me now. I want to hear if you have any new beliefs, behaviors, or habits in the past handful of years that have most positively impacted your life or changed you for the better.
Yeah, well, I kind of touched upon this like earlier, but definitely just like I like finding out who I was. And kind of like the idea of like, I was so tied to my identity of being a national champion, of being a rower, being an athlete, that I needed to do like some soul searching to kind of figure out who I am. And so really finding out what makes me happy, what makes me smile, who I want to be around. Like I really like found like who I want to be friends with, or what relationships I want to invest in. It really, really changed me for the better today, and like a kind of like a new thing that I learned. So although it's not like per se a habit, that is probably how I would answer that question.
And if there is, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is there something that, for me, like journaling, writing out, getting my ideas on the page has been super helpful for me. It sounds like you did some like deep self-reflection. Do you find your biggest insights on walks, when it's writing in a journal, talking with friends, like laying in your bed? Like what does it look like for you?
Probably two things. One, the walks, or like when I was in Australia, like the beach, or what, that kind of thing, being outside. But also, yeah, talking to friends and really like investing in the relationship and learning. It really taught me like more about myself and more about them, and just talking about stuff, hard stuff, talking about stuff that you don't want other people to know, maybe just like being vulnerable, really, because I was always a very tough person rowing, like I was very disciplined, no, couldn't show any weakness, but being able to drop your guard a little bit really changed me.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people have those thoughts in the back of their head, but actually taking the first step to changing that. Your story and your reflection just shows like it'll change you for the better, which is awesome to hear.
Yeah.
My final question I like to ask kind of just ties everything up in a pretty bow, and it's selfish question, like most of these are for me. It's like I love quotes and mantras, and I think just like having reminders of the wise words of others, really, they change over time, but they help me kind of navigate my days, what have you. So I'm wondering if you have a quote or mantra that you live by or find yourself repeating often through the ups and downs of life.
I would say like I don't have a mantra that I think like, oh, that's me. Like I am everything about that. Like that's who I am. But I would say like one that I aspire to be is like a quote. It's we're so busy watching out for what's just ahead of us, but we don't take time to enjoy where we are. And that's something that I'm really trying to focus on. I'm always thinking about the next step, the next post, the next job interview, whatever it is. I really want to focus like for 2021, like right now, living in the moment, like it's today. What am I going to do? Just someone asked me to do something spontaneous. Yes, I'll say yeah. Like instead of saying no, say yes. So just really enjoying the day, the moment is something that I'm hoping I can instill into my life more.
Oh, that resonates with me so much. Kind of like an intention that I've been thinking about is like, okay, we create plans, but I am flexible to change. And that means say yes more often. And because whatever plan you have is probably going to break. So just go into it knowing that, okay, I'm going to be flexible. And if an opportunity to hang out with friends, go for a walk with a family member, go to the gym with your brother, like say yes. Those investing in that is more important than any plan that you had. Like you can do it later, you can do it tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Enjoy it now. So that was a reminder I needed. So thank you very much for sharing. And thank you so much for digging into your whole story. And I think it was really, really like tactical for people who want to start something, and then also inspiring for people more generally. So I just want to say big thank you for being so open and honest and vulnerable and really reflective. So thank you.
No, thank you, Chris, for having me. This was really fun.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to keep seeing the page grow, trying more recipes, maybe throwing some weird ingredients in brownies that aren't weird because they've been tested 3 times, but I'm looking forward to it. So thank you again.
Awesome. Thanks.
Awesome. Sweet. Bye. Hey, everybody. Thank you all for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed that one. As always, you can find links to everything we discussed, show notes, and a lot more goodies on my website at therangeproject.weebly.com. That's The Range Project, all one word, .weebly, WEEBLY.com. Thanks so much, and see you next time.